Okay, so welcome to the another lecture of Big Data, guys. And in this lecture, I'll be talking about definition of batch processing and stream processing. That what do we understand by batch processing and streaming, as its name suggests. And I believe it's self-explanatory in itself that batch means data that we are receiving on a particular interval. That is something called as batch, and the data which we are receiving in a real time, so that is called as streaming, right? And both of these kind of a data you will be dealing with in a big data industry or into a data industry nowadays. For example, so if I'll talk about a real-time streaming, so you must have observed, you must have felt that Instagram or YouTube or any other social media platform, based on your scrolls, based on your click, they will keep on changing your feed, right? So they are trying to track your clicks. They are trying to understand your retention rate on a particular video. They are trying to understand the CTR, a click-through rate, on a particular things that they are going to showcase. And immediately, with the help of those data, it is changing your feed, right? And you feel like that everything is personalized. Everything is personalized as per my requirement in a real time. And that's the reason so we are able to spend on an average 5 to 6 hours of time on just a mobile devices, and especially on a social media nowadays, right? Obviously it's not a good thing. I am against it basically, and I try to stop myself as much as I can in terms of using social media. But yeah, I think it's an integrated part of all of us life. So this is one of the real-time example. And this is not the only real-time example, I would say. Sensor data, so again we try to stream it in a real time. If I'll talk about a vehicle data, so in all the high-end vehicle, you will be able to find out that it is streaming your data, whether it's a engine health or whether it's a part health, or maybe whether it's a location. Each and everything you will be able to stream, and you will be able to see inside your app. So we are living into a more real world data, we are able to see now a more real world data scenario like we have not seen before. So here it's very crucial to understand that how we can try to segregate this streaming data, and we can try to segregate this batch data. Batch data simply means that the data that we are receiving on a regular interval. For example, if your manager is going to ask you about the sales report, so maybe your manager is going to ask you not like every second that, okay, give me a sales report, maybe on a daily basis, maybe on a weekly or monthly basis, your manager is going to ask for the sales report, or whatever activity that you are doing, maybe a task report. So your manager is not going to ask you like every second that, okay, fine, every second come and report me. And that kind of a data, such kind of a situation is called as batch mode or batch kind of a data. So segregation is very simple. So wherever time interval will be involved, so that is called as a batch. And maybe like that time interval can extend from a 1 minute to 1 hour to a week to a day to a month to a year. Depends situation to situation, depends business to business. But the data that we are receiving, right, the data that we are receiving on a regular interval, now that kind of a data in a real time, so that kind of a data is actually called as a streaming data. Now, so if I'll talk about a system, right, a system by which you will be able to process this real-time data. So you must have heard about a messaging system, for example, a Kafka. I'm not going to write anything in this one. So yeah, it's just like a theoretical video. So I'll try to keep it in this way. So you must have heard about a Kafka, a messaging system, right? A publisher and a subscriber. So from one end, someone can ingest a data, publish a data, and then from other end, you will be able to fetch a data, subscribe a data. So Kafka kind of a system, a Flink kind of a system, Apache Storm kind of a system, or a Spark structured streaming kind of a system. So these kind of a systems are actually required that we are going to study in this batch as well. So as a part of syllabus, right? So we have everything inside this particular batch. So this kind of a system is required to handle a stream processing, right? A Kafka, a Flink, a Storm, or maybe a Spark structured streaming. Now, what kind of a system we can try to use to handle a batch? I think we have tons of such kind of a system. Even we have a legacy system and a modern distributed system. So maybe I can try to use a Hadoop, right, where we can try to store. Hadoop is, by the way, it's a distributed file system. So where in a different node, it is going to store a data with the fault tolerance replications. So we can try to use maybe a Hadoop to store a data, and then we can try to write a program in a MapReduce, or maybe we can try to write maybe a Spark program over there, or a Spark batch program we can try to write. So which will look into a data after a particular interval, and it is going to process a data. We can try to use maybe a Talent over here. We can try to use maybe a Informatica over here. Maybe we can try to use even a AWS batch processing situation. So where we can try to process a data. For example, AWS Glue I can talk about, maybe a Google Cloud Data Flow I can talk about, ADF Azure Data Factory I can talk about. So all of these you can consider as an option, Azure Data Factory or maybe a AWS Glue, which is similar to Azure Data Factory. UI is different, provider is different, but yeah, it's almost similar. And I have that in your chapters as well. So Google Cloud Data Flow. So these are the system we can try to use under the hood, and so that I will be able to process a data which is available or which requires a batch mode processing. Means process it not immediately but in a interval. So hope all of you are able to understand a definition wise that what is the difference between a batch mode of data and a streaming data, and then what kind of a system that we are going to use, and everything we are going to study as we will progress inside your lecture. So with that, thank you so much. See you again in a next lecture.